Hey there YouTube, I'm Yukitsu, this is the Yukitsu Times, welcome to my channel, and welcome to a little bit of Shogun 2. No, this isn't Shogun 2, this is Attila.
Sighted the enemy.
Total War Attila. And we're just playing a quick game. And basically I just wanted to check in on the game, see how the meta was, see if it was interesting to play. It's shifted a little bit from where it was before. There's pretty balanced armies these days. I think that people generally tend to take a good mix of sort of ranged units, melee units, cavalry. My opponent here does not have any cavalry, which is a little bit strange. He's also got these 3 pikemen here, and a small number of pikemen is working its way into an astonishingly large number of army compositions, and I have no real idea why that is the case. Personally, I would never take 3 units of pikes. If I'm going to take pikes, I'm either going to take 6 to 8 of them, or I'm not going to take any at all. It's kind of an all or nothing thing, because what they're supposed to do is sort of hold up your center in a very sort of strong and assertive sort of way. So in any case, my opponent does actually have these elite ballistarii, and they're a very, very potent ranged unit, much, much better than these cheap Nordic hurlers that I bought and brought to the frontier. But that's okay, we're going to get into a little bit of skirmishing with them anyway. One of the things that my opponent has done a little bit peculiar is that he's put his sword units on the wings, and this is something that you'll see me do from time to time, but not to this extreme, because what's happened here is he's got these numeroi on that flank, but he's got... they're covering the elite ballistarii, which is a little bit odd. He's also got Palatina there.
Being ambushed.
Being ambushed by these ballistarii technically, but that's not really a big deal. One of the interesting things is that they actually outrange my hurlers, which is kind of upsetting in a certain way, because one of the big advantages of these guys is supposed to be that they have more range compared to these guys, which are supposed to have very short range. I decided to shift my lines and move these guys up. I think that I hit the spread out button while I was doing this, maybe not. But in any event, what I'm going to do to win this is something that I did a lot in Shogun, which is I'm going to do these feinted charges, and my opponent's actually popped some abilities on his crossbows. They're taking some shots, so this means that while my guys are in range, he's moving his guys into the sort of looser formation, but at the same time I'm also doing a quick charge in, and in fact I'm charging also a couple of these sword units, and this was a half feint. I didn't really care if I got these elite ballistarii all that much. Getting them as I do is actually kind of nice. What I really wanted to hit were the Palatina and the numeroi on the sides there, because they're basically exposed melee infantry there. I can hit them with this charge infantry, and I can get back out, and you can see that I've already racked up quite a few kills with that quick charge there. You know, these are Saxon Lancers. They're not the most expensive shot cavalry out there. So, you know, pretty clean. I did take some losses, but this is the kind of thing that these sword units do not want to get into, that kind of fight. And if he doesn't save those in the fight against my Chosen Warriors, he's not going to be able to beat them, because my Chosen Warriors can beat numeroi one-on-one, and they can certainly beat Palatina. So he's going to need all the infantry help that he can get in that regard, or he's going to need to really whittle them down with his elite ballistarii. You can see that I'm getting my hurlers sort of back in position. I want to continue firing away with them. In particular, if I can start hitting these the pikemen, Manaulatoi, or whatever, that's going to be the sort of ideal situation there. We're going to go for a bit of a charge over on this side here. What I should have done was really gone in from sort of the side, kind of go in from the front a little bit more than I probably needed to. And the numeroi over here are going to actually do a pretty good job. Yeah, so you can see them sort of braced here, ready. And we get a pretty decent charge, a bit of an angle. And unfortunately what happens is what really hurts us is we get tangled here. So a lot of our troops get sort of butchered on the runaway there. But, you know, it's not too bad. These guys get sort of shot up a little bit there while they're going out, and while those guys have gone out, I'm going to go back in with another unit of Saxon Lancers. Now that they've lost a bunch of hit points, this is going to be actually a pretty effective charge. But again, the problem is that I sort of get tangled. I should actually just be going in, like, dead front if I'm going to be doing this sort of thing, but from the straight side also works, but the more to the side you are, the harder it is to do a pull-out. So you can see, again, a little bit tangled. At this point in time, my opponent has sort of lost his melee infantry on this one side here, and I'm going to just continue doing these cycle charges on his sword infantry as much as I can be. And you can see that these Palatina are basically crushed. And I've still got quite a lot of these Saxon Lancers. These Lancers are free to get around to these ballistarii. So that is going to be quite good. In the actual skirmishing phase, I've lost quite a lot of my dudes just because my Noric hurlers are so much worse than his elite Ballistariae, and I'm almost out of ammunition anyway, so this is not necessarily an ideal situation because he still does have his pikes. I've nearly killed one unit, but I'm not too worried about it just yet. There are ways to deal with the pikemen. I should be putting my sword units on reserve ammunition though, but in any event, you can see that I'm charging in with some of my chosen warriors, especially against these spear units. There's nothing they can do against that. Against over on these sides over here, in the middle, actually, these pikes are going to be too hard for me to defeat with just chosen warriors up front. You can see that I'm chucking some of these spears over here, which is going to do a little bit of damage to them as well. It's actually a great way to deal some damage to them. Look at that. So, yeah, we've taken out quite a lot of them that way. Over here, still pandemonium, still chaos. My cavalry's tied up in these fights now, and they're not going to be able to win these protracted fights. It really was just, you know, I needed to hit them, I needed to get back out, and I did that a couple times, and that really did work out well for me. Over here, it's gone better. I've got 3 units of cav still, but of course, I've got also these chosen warriors that can now come in, get around sort of the side or flanks. These guys are taking a little bit, and I decided to charge off over here because I figured these guys are going to get broken by the hurlers. Even though I'm almost out of ammunition, I probably still have enough to break these guys. And you can see that, you know, there's barely any of them left, but that doesn't make them any less dangerous if you run into a pike. It's still going to hurt. Over here, still got the inexorable press of pikes, but he's been cleaned off along the sides, and he has not moved away while I charged in with my chosen warriors into these elite Ballistariae. He's going to move those Menatuli and some more Ballistariae for some reason in melee combat here, which I guess shows a little bit of a lack of micro concentration, because he's also let me get in here when he should have had those Comatus Tensis, and maybe in the Palatina Guard up there blocking. Over here, I'm going to lose all my cavalry on this side, but they've already done a lot of the work they needed to do, and at this point in time my hurlers as well. If you have melee units and your opponent is pushing forward with pikes, this is how you deal with them. You have a unit in front of them so that they cannot turn around, and then you attack them from the rear. If he turns around, you attack them with that front unit. This unit is marching towards these guys, so eventually what's going to happen is I'm going to engage them with these Nordic raid leaders. My general, that is. Since his unit is pushing forward this direction, I'm able to sort of move this unit out this way and get around to the side of it, and I'll basically have this unit of pikes encircled. Not perfectly, since he is still getting a little bit of that pike action, but it's not too bad. You can see that that unit is losing dudes pretty quickly. Not as badly as this one is, but... So this is kind of the way that the game state is. Like, if you've got a good mix of melee troops of some sort, you've got ranged troops that can do some sort of either harassment, kill certain units, force your opponent into a bad position. You know, they can be really quite useful. My opponent invested a little bit too much into those elite Ballistariae and didn't have the means to properly protect them. So that's sort of what happened here. You can see that over here. I am going to lose these chosen warriors, but that's fine. They will hold out for a ridiculously long time because they're one of the best melee infantry in the game. That's not even hyperbolic. They're probably a little bit broken. Just because their morale is pretty much they pretty much won't run until they're all dead. That's how good they are. Like, they're losing decisively. They've got 204 kills, and they're down to 10 men. You know, fighting away here. Rapidly getting killed off, and they're just, you know, going at it. They're up to 204 now. I mean, it is just literally obscene how much they can get done. And this chosen warrior over here, it's at 107. Not anywhere near as many kills, but that doesn't really matter. And here, we're down to 4 men, still not even wavering. They're shaken, but they're not wavering. We're down to 19 morale of 110. So that should go to tell you just how deadly these guys are. But you can just sort of get through a lot of situations with this kind of composition. At this point in time, my opponent just has this unit of swordsmen over here, Numerai, which are also a very good unit. They're quite powerful. He's got quite a lot of upgrades on them.
This is shameful.
But, you know, we're just going to go ahead and get another cavalry charge off against them. And he's going to do the smart thing and put them into a shield wall formation, which he should have done very, very early in the game. They weren't in shield wall formation when I first hit them with my cavalry, but at this point in time his line is too thin, and immediately shattered. on impact. So yeah, you can see that my opponent here, he focused on, you know, he didn't have enough mobility to deal with the army that I had, and the matchup of infantry that he did have wasn't a good match against mine. We had one unit of Saxon Lancers, which are a very cheap cavalry unit again. It's 550 for the unit. Got 337 kills, which is a ludicrous number of kills. We've also got some of our infantry gear getting over 200, which is quite good. Getting over 100 is quite impressive, actually, in this game. So, you know, that kind of thing happening means that he's just really in trouble there. Even our general there, which is relatively cheap, 1,550. It's the same as a Saxon Lancer. Managed to get 67 kills with barely any damage to him, whereas the Palatine Guards were there. Took complete losses and, you know, completely died. This one's another one. This one's as the Lachmids. Let's go with that one. This is another replay. This one is as a faction that sort of is that Sassanid-like Desert Kingdom style here to it. This one is basically token shooting. I had a little bit of money left over, so I picked up a couple of these guys, but ultimately my strategy basically didn't involve them. And this one's more of a cautionary thing. My opponent's gone Geats, so that was the faction I was using last time in a certain sense. They're very, very similar to the Saxons, and the units you can see that he's using here, very similar to the Saxon units that I was using. He's got an axe general, although his is using different type of axe and shield, if I recall correctly. He's got some elite spears. It's these champions, chosen warriors, that are the really good ones. He's got some axe. I think those are Heermen. And then he's just got some bows and javelin men. So fairly basic setup, but again, you know, also highlights the importance of cavalry. What I've gone with here in this case are the Sanai, which are a solid unit that's good at cracking armor. You know, it's a decent unit as far as a melee sword unit goes. The melee damage is what really sets them apart, as well as their melee attack. Their melee defense is trash, but if you can get them in good positions where they're attacking units and killing them very, very quickly, then, you know, that doesn't matter that much. Things like Romans, where they don't necessarily have the best attack or the best damage, but they've got those really, really good armor values. The Sanai are great against that kind of unit just because you will crack through them quite quickly, whereas these guys, their low defense is made up for the fact that they've got decent armor, decent health, high morale. I've got some chevrons on them as well, so that helps a little bit. As actually, do I have? I don't think I do have chevrons on them. Thought I did, but my opponent here gone the opposite route. He's got a ton of chevrons, and this is a mistake in this game. You don't want to have lots and lots of chevrons on these elite units. If you're going to get chevrons, get them on, you know, it sometimes works out on mid-range units, but again, on these chosen warriors, those numbers barely are boosting it at all. I mean, 124 morale really doesn't make a difference. So my opponent here, you know, I'm sort of moving around my cav. I don't want to encircle him completely. He's sort of gone for a bit of a noob box. And this is something that's been in every Total War as far as I can remember. And I'm just going to start picking at these javelins. They're going to actually cause a significant amount of damage once I start moving into combat against him. So there's no real reason for me to just let him keep those guys alive. He's going to move up with his archers eventually, but that's going to take him a little while, and he's got them upgraded a little bit. Not that that really matters in this case. Upgraded Nordic bows really doesn't help. So I'm moving my army to encircle his noob box, and this is one of the things that you can do when you're doing it. You can either force your way through in a very concentrated way, straight down the center, take them out using that sort of concentrated attack, or you can sort of move such that you're encircling their noob box and hitting it from all sorts of angles. And if you can do that, then they're probably going to be in trouble. So every Nordic javelinman that gets killed in this is going to be a decrease in their ability to fight back once I charge into their lines. And them being incapable of defending against my ranged attacks would be really good. Here he's got his Nordic bows firing away. They seem to be equivalent in range to the Germanic bows, so very, very long range. This prompts me to move forward. I realize, okay, I'm not going to win this in a skirmishing match. I still want to kill the Nordic javelinmen because they're the ones that are going to be able to cause the biggest amount of damage to me. So that's where my focus fire is. You can see that I've decided to charge some of his units. I've selected where to charge. But he's left some gaps here in certain parts of his line, so that's just really part of what happens when you don't have enough troops to form a line that can match mine. And you can see even all the way over here, charged in over here against his Viking Raiders. I'm going to lose that fight with my Sanai, but, you know, it's not a terrible fight for me, actually, just because, you know, it's offense versus raw offense. In this particular case, though, my opponent has been a little bit hasty. He's left these Nordic Raiders a little bit exposed, but the Nordic bows are even more so exposed. He's trying to charge in a bunch of reinforcements to over here, which is going to overwhelm those Sanai that I have over here. Fortunately, I do get a breakthrough there. Unfortunately, I'm getting pelted by those javelins, which is really causing damage. So, I've got some reserves, though. I've got these spears that I can bring in just to plug lines. And you can see over here, I've managed to also get more of those Nordic bows. In fact, all of them with Cav. And this is just what happens if you don't have a secure box. If you're going to box, you might as well go all the way and have a complete box. Just 100% box yourself in. I've switched over targets to this javelin, and they were stacked, so I was killing them both anyway, but this gives me an opportunity to start charging into these Chosen Warriors. I need to work really hard and to kill basically every single one of them. And my units are not up to that task. The Sanai are not as good as those Chosen Warriors, so they will lose. Quite badly, in fact. Although, as you can see, the huge offensive capability that those Sanai have really did help me kill a lot of the Chosen Warriors, even though I wasn't necessarily going to be able to withstand the counterattack. Over here, the Desert Levy, no chance whatsoever. They're holding units completely. On the other hand, this cavalry charge from behind here, you can see the devastation it's causing on these Viking Raiders. They don't have that kind of health that's required to survive that kind of charge. They don't have the defense or armor.
The enemy are losing ground.
And over here, you can just see everywhere that this is happening. So this is a case of my opponent going for high quality, but wasn't really utilizing that quality effectively or properly. Because you do still need at least enough numbers to provide a front, or if you're providing, you know, a more limited front, you put some of the Chosen Warriors to tie up 3 or 4 units on the flank, and hope that they manage to hold out long enough for the rest of where you are putting the brunt of your forces together to punch a hole through the enemy lines and start wrapping around them. And that's not what he was capable of doing there. So we'll show you one more, I think. And these are me playing sort of... This was a less conventional army. It was a little bit more like a rush army because I didn't have very much range. Although you can see how crucial they were. They killed over 100 each, which is really, really quite strong. You can see that that's way more than his more expensive Nordic bows did, and it's more than those Nordic javelinmen did, both of which are more expensive units than what I had. The Sanai, you can see that they sort of did okay. The Chosen Warriors did poorly here just because they were overmatched so badly. The Viking Raiders did actually a good job, but it was the cavalry that really made the decisive blow against my opponent there. Alright, so let's go ahead and... let's pick this one. It's Eastern Roman Empire versus me as the Franks. You can see that this time I've taken some pikes. My opponent has also taken them. He's taken a good number of them as well this time, unlike a lot of my opponents. Both of us have taken a small contingent of swords. He's taken a little bit more than I have. He's got 5 units. I've got 2. And he doesn't really have very much shooting. He's got 4 horsemen to my 5 elite dramatic archers. So I've got a massive edge up on him in terms of shooting. And my cavalry component's a little bit good. The price difference is mainly in that he's got more swords, and his pikes are much, much more elite and expensive than mine are. Mine are like 210, his are 425. So his cost more than twice as much as mine, I believe. Alright, so this is... you know, how to use pikes to a certain degree, because a lot of my opponents just don't use pikes correctly. This is not a good map for either of our army compositions. Well, it's a little bit better for his, I'd argue, because you don't want to be reliant on cavalry in a heavily forested map, but you can see that my opponent has set up very strangely. He's set up all of his pikes along the wing, and he's got his swords on the other wing. So if I can just have my pikes presented in front of these guys, and just nothing in front of his pikes, then I'm going to be able to do a lot of damage, and he's not going to be able to do a lot of damage back to me. By contrast, you know, I've got the pikes here. I've got the swords sort of more along the sides, as you can see, and a little bit back, so they can act as a reactionary force. The pikes are holding the center line. That's what they do. They're covering for my ranged units, although he doesn't have any ranged units to cover for, really, which is another sort of compositional thing. Now, this is going to be a bit wonky because I'm going to just walk past him. So... you know, I thought, you know, he probably would set up sort of near this clearing here. Turns out he didn't. He was over here, so he doesn't know where I am. I don't know where he is. I eventually end up figuring out where he is, but, you know, it takes a while. You know, I sort of figure, okay, well, he's not that way. I send out a couple scout units of cavalry as feelers, but what eventually happens is I figure out that he must be over in this general direction. I figure we either crossed in the fog of war or something like that happened, but, you know, it happens. So, when do you use bow cavalry? You use bow cavalry when you have gone, just for a lot of cavalry, you've got complete cavalry dominance, and you've got a good number of archers as a base, and you don't have much infantry. And I can show you a match like that. I'd have to play another one since I didn't save the recordings of that, but bow archers don't really mesh well with a pike line formation like this. If you've got these sort of mobile archers, the advantage of them is that they can get around the enemy lines, they can get into good positions, and they can fire while kiting much more effectively than the infantry versions can. But what they can't do is get into a protracted firefight, which is what this line is saying. If I were to use my elite Gothic or elite German archers and get into a long protracted firefight against my opponent, what's going to happen is I'll win because I've got twice as many people in each unit with higher range stats. So these Equites Sagittarii would lose in a straight up shooting match against my my non-cavalry archers here, these elite Germanic archers. So here you can see he's trying to harass a little bit with these guys. It's not a bad idea. You can see that, on the other hand, I've started firing away at this cavalry here.
Ambush troops have been detected.
And we'll go ahead and bring this back to normal speed. Gus set to flaming arrows just for the hell of it mostly, but they're actually pretty damn effective. We've managed to get a decent charge against these Scolae Palatinae. Unfortunately, he's going to just ram all of the rest of his cavalry into my Frankish Lancers. This is a medium cost unit. This is not the Sacra Francisca, which are the really, really good Frankish cavalry. And here I'm adjusting my lines over to the side, and I'm reinforcing with more Frankish Lancers. Now, I, unlike him, have charge cavalry, so that charge that I got off is going to cause way more damage to those Scolae Palatinae as compared to what his charge was doing, which is why he had to reduce so many units. But now that he's tied up, my unit is going to rout, it's going to flee, but they're going to be able to rally because enough of them will have survived that. Here you can see that the Scolae Palatinae have also broken. Another unit of Scolae Palatinae are just getting demolished. And my Frankish Lancers, since they haven't been charged by his units, are actually going to be doing pretty okay. Here you can see that I'm getting plenty of archery shots against these Equites Sagittarii. They're just getting mown down completely. They've got no hope here. And here you can see that our unit over here has in fact returned. That's another reason why I threw in a second unit. Those guys have finally been seen off permanently. Over on this side, you can see that my opponent has started to push forward with his pikes directly into the front of my pikes, which is, you know, fine. He'll win that, were it not for the fact that he sort of used the wrong command to do it. So you can see that our units are now in the press of pike, which is going to be just sort of very slow, very derpy. He's enveloped me just slightly here, so he will eventually win that, were it not for the fact that I'm going to be getting these elite sword heremen, and I'm going to be bringing them around, and I'm going to be attacking the flank of his unit. Now, he is going to break through, I believe, here. You can break through inferior pikes, especially if you've got your pike formation in a more dense sort of formation there. But at the same time, he's also got all these Legio Comitatensis packed up over here. They cannot get through a pike line very easily. You can see that they're taking shots from these elite archers, doing quite a good job. I'm still just cycling cavalry into there, and you can see that I've broken through one of those Scolae Palatinae with the remnants of that unit over there, and we're just going to do another charge over here. This one, I think, was a Sacra Francisca, so that Sacra Francisca hits hard and is going to cause a ton of kills on that charge. 25 cavalry kills, already going up again. And you can see that these Scolae Palatinae and these Excubitores Cavalry Guard, you know, just getting massacred now that they're in with my heavy cav. I brought a couple units of Scolae Palatinae, Sacra Francisca. You can see another one over here. They managed to get in behind those Minutolae, those pikemen. There's another fight over here. You can tell again, I got behind these pikes, so they're going to get killed by my cavalry. And at this point in time, I decided to just commit my Sacro Francisca a little bit more. But I'm sort of rolling along that flank here, and he's decided that he can't continue just posturing here. He's going to have to go and move his army to reinforce that side where he might be able to do something. You can see the whiz of just arrows heading across his lines there. My pike line is getting really thin over here. You can just tell the difference that quality does make when you've got pikes. Although I am starting to fling out some flaming arrows into that area, but I think actually I'm firing at these guys over there, but still. Over here, my Sacro Francisca have cleaned house. Couple losses, but nothing too major. I've got 2 more Sacro Francisca over here, one of which is pretty balls deep. The other one is going to get a pretty clean charge off against those Equites Sagittarii. It's going to cause a lot of damage to them, but they're a pretty tough unit, and I didn't get, like, as clean as it was, we are in the forest, so it was penalized. Still, you can see that we're breaking through on the side here. We can now move these elite sword Heerban over towards the side here to keep him hemmed in, and we started to move our pikes offensively, which is something that a lot of players don't expect to happen. They expect me to just sort of sit there hoping that he walks straight forward into my pikes, but instead what's happened is my pikes are now sort of moving to attack orders against these Legio Comitatenses. As you can see, it actually moves very slowly, though. They do stop as soon as anything's within pike range, which is, I think, a problem, but I think we end up pushing them forward about now. Yeah, here we go. So here you can see those Legios sort of running into those pikes a little bit more. And we're going to press forward with those pikes. Over here, Sacro Francisca are getting kind of raffle stomped because they've just been in so many fights for so long against pretty heavy infantry. That's really been hurting them. I charged my general at the last second into this Magister Militum, and that'll work out okay for us. These elite sword Heerban are in way over their head, though. One of the things that's really saving me in this fight is the elite Dramatic Archers. They're doing really good jobs of just causing damage. Oh dear. Over here are pikes, doing sort of variably. This one unit over here is losing because they haven't got their pikes properly out, but you can see other pikes have got their pikes in a good direction. So it's going to let us gradually hold these in place while pushing forward. Now, pikes don't really get a lot of kills in this game right now. It's not like those versions where you can just walk forward and instantly kill everything, but they're still pretty good. At this point in time, we're putting raking fire to the sides of his pike formations. You can see that we're causing huge casualties to them. We're causing friendly fire casualties as well, but it's nothing so bad that I want to stop doing this, because it really is going to be crucial for us to get these guys with this ranged weapons holder pinned down. Now, we did lose a unit in the center area here, and you can tell that was going to happen. It was definite. But at the same time, we've now got tons and tons of fire coming in against these guys. And this is the difference between him and I, is that I had the shooting assets to can really just hammer his units with arrows. You can see this unit just really rapidly declining. I feel like flaming arrows are a little bit OP right now. So again, his pikes managed to see mine off. I cannot beat him in a press of pikes. This unit's sort of not going to win, but they're not going to... It's going to take them a long time to lose. But at the other hand, you know, we still have an opportunity here to take out the rest of these pikes. You can see it's almost like a crossfiring on these guys here. And they're going down very quickly. This is why you need a little bit of ranged units sometimes. Like, if I had gone against this and I had no ranged units, it would have been much harder for me to win that one, just because they are very effective against those sorts of things. So, yeah, you can see the types of effects that those different units had. His bow archers, his horse archers, rather, barely did anything, whereas my elite Germanics did a lot, okay? some of them getting almost 100 kills. That's quite a lot for ranged units in this particular game. Our pikes, neither of us did a lot, but he spent a lot more money on his, even though he's got one less, just because his are much more elite and expensive. The cheap pikes I find to be a little bit better in this game, just because they'll get the same job done, but they'll get it done cheaper. My elite sortier band, a lot of kills surprisingly. They're not actually all that good a unit, but the reason that they could get so much done was because I had these Lancers and the Sacro Francisco all working together to make it so that his units in melee, his melee infantry, were getting a little bit trounced faster than they otherwise would. So, yeah, that's the state of the game right now. Not necessarily sure if it's the best state that it's ever been in, but it feels like people are using a good variety of different army types, which I think is positive. It does take a long time to get into a game for me, but, you know, that's the way it is sometimes. So, anyway, I hope you found this video enjoyable, and of course, as always, I hope to see you all next time. Okay, so this is just a little add-on, a little bonus clip to that that video I've got there. This is an unorthodox style of army, but I think it might work well for some of you players that prefer sort of micro-attention and a lot of cavalry without having to necessarily be just a melee rushdown spammer. This is an army that I've been using with the White Huns, which is a new sort of free faction that came with the game. It's, you know, everyone should have it, and it's an interesting faction. It adds a little bit, takes a little bit away. They're pretty much similar to the Huns, but they have got some elephants. They're missing some cavalry elements. They've added some elephants, some cavalry elements. One of the things that is really sort of different is that they really don't have the same sort of sword presence I find compared to the Huns and spear presence, but who really cares about that? They've also got a few less ranged options, but we're up against another unconventional army. It's got a lot of cavalry. I'm not really sure. It's a Lani Heavy Cataphracts, a very, very heavily armored, very tough unit, and it's guarding a couple of these onagers. Onagers of this sort aren't actually that expensive, but they don't actually do that much damage. Now, I've decided to just set up in front of them. I don't really care about taking shots from these onagers, because they'll run out of ammunition pretty quickly, and even though these heavy cataphracts are very, very durable, you can cause damage to them with these arrows, and you'll see that pay off in a big way, because I'm using much, much less expensive cavalry. I'm using these step cataphracts, a 500 gold unit, a gold talent unit, and these guys I think are 850 if I recall correctly. I cannot remember for sure, but you can see that they look like they're just fine. They've taken a couple casualties. They've, you know, in one of the units. The other one that's been getting shot at hasn't taken any, but you can see over here, he's going to charge forward, and I'm going to counter-charge with a couple of my units. And he should be able to wipe the floor with me. He's got 60 of these Lani Heavy Cataphracts, a much more expensive unit. And what is going to happen when our cavalry meets in the center here? Those Lani Cataphracts just get just crushed completely on that charge there. And the reason is, of course, that there were a whole load of those Lani Cataphracts that were already on low health, coupled with the fact that my Step Cataphracts have much, much higher charge capabilities, and you end up with that sort of disastrous charge effect there. On this side, I'm trying to manage my army so that I'm keeping these guys at bay. I don't want them getting free shots at my other Step Cataphracts. I pull back my Step Cataphracts so that they can cover the archers here, just in case this combat takes too long. But you can see that I've already broken through. He should have actually brought in a second wave of these Lani Cataphracts. But as you can see, I managed to get a pretty okay charge here. And this is not only a worse charge, but this unit also wasn't softened up by those fire arrows. So what you see here is that even though I did get that charge bonus, I barely killed any of those guys on the charge. The second unit, of course, was cushioned. I basically got none, and this is going to turn against me very, very quickly, because those melee cavalry are much, much better in protracted melee. And actually, this was not the worst charge that I've ever gotten off. Just because they were sort of strung out like that doesn't actually reduce the charge bonus. So these Lani Heavy Cataphracts, getting a lot of damage done to them. I'm causing a lot of friendly fire here, but that's also okay. I throw in a second wave of my cavalry here, and I try and get around behind so I'm shooting his units more so than my own. And that second charge, though, this unit was already softened up a little bit, so that's going to cause a lot more damage. And you can just sort of see that he's having a real hard time pinning down my units. I've managed to thwart another bit of cavalry fight over here, and you just keep your archers all safe using cavalry charges, and if he comes at you with infantry, you just withdraw your entire battle line, just everything, because it's all very mobile. I mean, your archers can't outrun the cavalry, but, you know, if he's coming at you with cavalry, you block with cavalry. If he's coming at you with infantry, these guys can outrun infantry just fine, so that's not really a big concern. His artillery, completely out of ammunition already. You can see that his heavy cataphracts did eventually sort of grind through this unit of steppe cataphracts. Just a much cheaper unit, much weaker unit. And even this unit of steppe cataphracts over here is going to have the tide of battle sort of turning against it eventually, getting a couple of these good shots against them with these. We're sending in yet another unit of these steppe cataphracts. I do want it to usually just be 2 against 1. This is not a great charge angle, so what we're going to see is that these Atlantic cataphracts are barely going to take any damage from that charge. But still, ultimately what we want to do is keep them pinned in place. I've got enough cataphracts that I don't really care if I lose all of those. Over here, you can see that we're starting to put some fire into these Sarmatian bands here. Got Sarmatian band and Elite Agrithersi. I should be better microing where I'm shooting these arrows, but it doesn't really matter tremendously. Those Alani Chosen Raiders coming in here. And, you know, it's just a shooting fight at this point. These guys are pretty elite, so they're not going to run at these low casualties. But, you know, they're not going to be able to do necessarily enough to wipe out all of these archers. They are going to charge in. He decides that he's just going to charge in melee here. And what I'm thinking is I'm not paying attention to these guys. I decide to withdraw the rest of my archers and leave this one here just so that he's pinned in place while I'm firing at him still. And you can see that these fire arrows are still hailing in there. So I am going to lose a unit off that, and that's fine. Over here, he's taking more shots from not only my Ura archers, but also my remaining cav archery. And you can just see the effects of that mass archer fire. Just tears apart the sort of lead Agritherses. I charge them with a unit of steppe cataphracts to keep them running, and switch my target eventually over to these guys, but they're also already running. You can see the effects of those arrows just whistling through there.
The enemy refuses to admit defeat.
And they're going to start taking casualties pretty quickly now that they're a little bit softened up, and that leads to a decisive victory. So, yeah, that's another sort of way to play this game that isn't the way that I was sort of describing, because you, like, can discard virtually any one element in the game, so long as you've got the rest of it. And this one has got archery. It's actually got extremely good archery, and it's got cavalry. And in particular, it's got counter-cavalry in a very strong sense here. A lot of these cavalry picks that I made were designed specifically to counteract enemy cavalry. So you can get away with counter-cavalry, cavalry, and archers. You can also get away with... I've won games that have no cavalry. I've also won games that had no archery. So you can eliminate any one element so long as you sort of know what you're doing. And in the case of this sort of mobile army, you really sort of need to make sure that you're covering these who are archers, because they're actually the key to winning this game in the event that your opponent, it goes into sort of later game. Because once you've run out of arrows on these step-mounted bows, these guys are the ones that are going to have to step up to the plate and break through an enemy line. So anyway, I hope you found the video enjoyable, and of course, as always, I hope to see you all next time.